Welcome everybody to our fourth of our series. This is Secular Mental Health, and this month I'm going to be covering a concept of proximity in time. It may sound a little esoteric, it may sound a little maybe even spiritual, maybe even, but it's all right for how anybody might perceive it. I am going to be focusing mostly on the connection of storytelling, as our ancestors did, down to what we've discovered with science over time. We can now explain a lot of the concepts that we might have said in story form and tell it better, but sometimes it's good to tell it in a story form as well. So you can kind of get a well-rounded understanding of something. So let's get started. So the agenda today, I will be covering the story of the two wolves. Then I'm going to break down the neurobiology of how the brain processes information. Then I'm going to cover illusory truth effect and dual process theory, and then we'll be asking ourselves a question and working through the idea of what if we fed the wrong wolf. So let's get started. So some people might be familiar with this one. It's an old story. I think it's been associated with a lot of indigenous people, but I don't know if there's any specific one. I read a little bit that Cherokee Nation might have had this a bit as one of their stories, but the way that the story goes is everyone has like a dueling set of wolves or spirits or good and evil in their mind, and they have to deal with, how to not let one overpower the other. So in the story, as the story goes, is both wolves are fighting and dueling each other, and this is maybe a story or a tradition handed down, and maybe somebody might ask, so which one becomes dominant of the wolves? And the answer to that is the one you feed the most. I think it's kind of a cool concept. I think we can all kind of relate to it a little bit. What does everybody think when they hear that kind of a story?
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so do you guys perceive it as, like, do you have a dueling good and evil in your mind, and you're like figuring out which one to feed more or less? Is that?
They're always opposing forces. I think I'm always in search of a balance between them. I didn't really think about it as which one do I give more weight or more oxygen to.
Oh, right. That's a good way to say it. Yeah. It's kind of a simplified way of looking at it as well. It's kind of a black and white kind of.
I always look at, like, a lot of my internal stuff is not always good or bad. Like things that I used to think were strengths, I realize, like, oh, that's not actually a strength if you take it to such a point that you're avoiding growth, or like if you're leaning on strength too much, it becomes a weakness. The duality is the wrong word, because I see it as both. Like, I don't see two opposing forces. I see two sides of one force, kind of, maybe.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes we might see. I do. I perceive the situation as that's an oversimplification of a lot of situations. However, it might be a good way to kind of get people primed to understand that there might be two different sides to every story, or there might be what we label as good and what we label as evil. It's a good framing, especially, yeah. And especially culturally, it's a good way to sell an entire audience who you don't know their background, kind of a story that they might all kind of pick up as you go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down kind of the scientific reason why this actually makes a lot of sense. What's actually going on in the brain is this kind of thing. So I've got a lot of words on the board again. I love putting words on the board, but this is the most heady part of our discussion today. but I wanted to cover it, and it's very important. So we have a lot of, I was going to say scientists, humans, neurobiologists. They've done a lot of research, and they've come to find a lot of truths or ways that the brain works. And when things are broken down with the brain, there kind of is this duality going on with neurons in particular. So neurological processes in the brain is all about learning and evolving and adjusting to the connections that most effectively interact with your environment. By practicing, repeating, increasing your proximity and time to things, your brain gets more and more wired and attached to those things in the environment. And so probably the most important part to think about this is your neurons do not have a concept of truth, fact, or reality. Neurons are only wiring themselves to what's successful, what repeatedly is done. Your brain's neurons will keep doing that over and over and over again. And then as that happens, the neurons will actually create a myelination around the neurons to make those processes faster and faster. Those processes are unconscious processes, and it's the white brain matter. Now there's also gray matter in the brain, again with the duality here. It's not that simple. It's not that simplified when you get into the details, but it's a good duality to explain. Gray matter is kind of your thinking and your processing parts of your brain. So the difference between those two parts of neurons, white matter makes things faster, quicker, so that you can process information a lot quicker. Driving, walking, moving, those processes are very automatic. And then there's gray matter stuff where you actually decide how you're going to do things and make actual decisions about it. So I'm getting a little heady here. What are you guys' thoughts on the information so far? Is there something, any part of it that makes sense or doesn't quite make so much sense?
Are both types of, are both types of brain matter in both hemispheres of the
Yes.
brain?
I guess a real quick way to say it is the gray matter is pretty much the outer cortex of your brain. There's a mixing of gray and white matter in the internal part of the brain around the hippocampus and the prefrontal lobe. And the white matter is pretty much the myelination of all the long connections in your brain, between your neurons. So that's like your brain stem and the central parts of your brain to make things faster, quicker, repeated behaviors. Your brain stem up through the hippocampus.
So nerves, they do still grow? I see the verbiage there.
Yeah, I'll cover that too. So they're important concepts. I wanted to include them because they might come up in part of our discussion. So neurogenesis, there's a lot more things we could cover. I was trying to narrow it down a little bit, but neurogenesis is basically the growth of neurons. This is a process that's continuously occurring in your brain. For the longest time, brain scientists, I think until the 80s, they thought that we didn't grow any more neurons. They have since found that that is not true. We actually keep growing neurons, just not at the amount that we would at the younger ages. So 0 to 5 years old, there's actually a really large amount of neurogenesis. And then the next part, neural pruning, there's actually a pruning of any neurons that are not used. And the way that neurons know whether to prune something or not is through neurotrophins. That promotes the growth and survival of neurons. If there's not a signal that we need to keep this neuron, it'll prune it back. So basically you use it or lose it is how the brain functions. And that's all the way into adulthood and into retirement until you die. If you don't use neurons, they'll steadily be pruning back those neurons as you go, except that they're myelinated or you continuously use them. So this might seem like a lot and it might not make sense at first, but it is basically the duality, and I've kind of put this duality on the board as well. So we have the duality of the different wolves, and we also have the duality of white and gray matter. Technically, that's mostly the neurobiological region, but in a technical sense, your white gray matter is on this side, and the gray matter is on this side. So I've shown this before as my chart to kind of explain stuff, but this, can anybody explain kind of why white matter would be on this side versus gray matter on this side?
Because you've got it written down on the handout, because the conscious stuff is more deliberate and less automatic.
Mm.
But it's better at logic, like the subconscious white matter stuff is like, it's the type of thinking that you don't think about the thinking you're doing, and you just
Right.
know things, you just see things, you just develop an opinion, whereas the other side requires like conscious effort.
Mm. Yeah, that's right.
Reactive versus deliberate.
Yes, exactly. The white matter is things that we do repeatedly gets myelinated. The neuron gets myelinated so that it's a quicker, faster reaction, so that the brain works faster to interact with the environment. That's the whole point of the neuron process, is it is trying to figure out the fastest, most efficient way to interact with the environment. It's not a matter of whether something's truth or facts or anything like that. It's trying to go fast, fast, fast. The myelinated part. Now the gray matter is where the thoughts and the really intense thinking, anything complex, that's where that is. Those are sections of the brain where there's large groupings of like neurons that are connected together and try to work out and process something. That is actually your intentional thinking parts of your brain. Some people have more gray matter than other people. And that is maybe genetic, but there's also this neuron pruning, and we have to think about that. I don't think that the science has actually figured out that it's completely due to like inactive thinking, but that's probably a good hypothesis. The less you use your brain, the less gray matter you'll have, and potentially the more myelination and quick thinking you might have. Let's move on from this one because it's pretty complex. This is also a theory that can be seen as complex, but it is actually a more simplified version. It's a actual psychological theory to kind of explain what I just described, which is like a bit heady. Basically, what's his name? Dr. Kaufman, who was I believe he's an economist. Don't quote me completely on that one.
What? Daniel Kahneman?
Yeah, Daniel Kahneman. Do you remember if he's an economist or?
No, he was a psychologist.
But he got a Nobel Prize for economy or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Because he
thinking.
taught them how things that seemed into like how system 1 and system 2 worked, and he talks about it in the book where they determined. Now I'm drawing a blank, but basically looked at performance of investment fund managers or something like that. I wish I remember the specifics though.
Well, I'll cover it, but yeah, kind of his whole framing. He primarily frames stuff from an economic perspective, not from like a psychological, how can we help people perspective. And some economists and advertisers and people that understood this, they actually figured out a way to kind of exploit the population from it, which I'm sure is not the best thing to use this. But so system one thinking is thinking fast, automatic thinking. System two thinking is slow thinking. It's active, intentional processing of information. So I have some examples too, like detecting how far away an object is. That would be quick thinking. Like right when you move up and you look at something, okay, that door's further away from that door. That's a quick, fast process. Driving a car on an empty road, that would be fast thinking. It's something you've done repeatedly over and over again. So it's more the myelinated like automatic processes. Thinking slow would be maybe trying to park a car in a very narrow space. You don't want to do that automatically because it's probably not going to work out. Also really intense thinking, like checking the validity of a claim. You're going to need to think a little bit harder than just, I think that's true, or I feel like that's true. You're going to actually say like pros and cons, keep the thought in your head, kind of rotate it around and work it out. So that's the difference between system one and system two thinking. Again, in the duality here, system one is over here. And system two is over here. Automatic. Unconscious is basically all the learned things that you've taken in over time, and your brain has made it as efficient as possible to process information and just go with the first impulse that you have or first feeling that you have. Things that are repeated over and over again, according to neurobiological processes, will get myelinated, and that will feel like it is true, so to speak. So system one, automatic. System two is thought and intent. So let's move on to the next section. So the whole point of what I'm building up to, the problem of our time. There are multiple theoretical and hypothetical ideas that we've figured out that people make cognitive mistakes about. One in particular is illusory truth effect, which I've basically been breaking down. This is all system one type thinking. Basically, the way that your brain is processing information is the more and more it's repeated, it starts to think, or actually more correctly, it feels like it's true. So familiar feels true. So, for example, just as a funny little example, purple is the best color. Now, I don't mean to say that just once. I'm going to say that all these times. Purple is the best color. Purple is the best color. Purple is the best color. Saying that over and over again may give a person the impression that purple is the best color. It's possible.
It is.
Yeah. And one statement over here, purple is a color, which is a fact. It is a something we've labeled. Purple is a color. So the illusory truth effect is they've come to find in multiple studies that when information is repeatedly presented to somebody, they eventually come to the point where they actually feel like it's true as opposed to it actually being true. Even if they're aware that the information was not true while they're taking it in, they may eventually go with it feels true. Can anybody substitute anything in here that they can think of that's happening right now where somebody repeats something over and over again and a population does believe that it's true?
We won, we won, we won.
Any other examples?
Trump is a great president.
The greatest.
The economy is performing great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Price of eggs. That's what drives the economy.
Right. Price of eggs is good. 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 But in reality, the price of eggs did go up, in
Stock
fact.
market's going up.
Stock market's going up, stock market's going up. It's the only thing we need to focus on about the economy, only thing, only thing, only thing. You repeat these types of concepts to certain people, they will suffer from the illusory truth effect at some point or another. Everybody's susceptible to it. It's something that we've come to find that the brain it's one of those issues that the brain processes, which is like what I was saying, it's the process of the neurobiology. The neuron does not know whether something's a fact or not. It's there for repetition to make things the most effective with the environment. So that's the most important concept I want to take away, and we're going to discuss that a little further in a second. I wanted to at least try this one, which is another puzzle. Has anybody ever heard of this? The Canizza triangle?
Looks familiar.
Yeah. What does everybody see in that picture?
Oh, two
Israel.
triangles.
What's that?
Star of David.
Oh, you see the Star of David? Okay.
Yeah, two triangles.
There's a star, 2 triangles, 3 Pac-Mans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, what is not in that picture that we do see in the picture?
Triangle. A
Yeah.
complete triangle.
Yeah, there is no complete triangle in that picture. What our brain does, because it's just how our brain works, we're able to fill in the blanks of almost any image, idea, and that along with like something that's repeated over and over again, somebody will fill in the blanks. It's just one of those many processes with the brain, and we should become aware of those so that we can make sure we don't think that there's a triangle or that the egg prices are just fine. We actually think about it a little further. Wait, is there a triangle there? Are the egg prices all right? Is the economy all right? That's slow thinking. So that's the concept also of the difference between fast and slow thinking. Seeing a triangle there is actually fast thinking. It's just what your brain does, just like the distance between that door is further than that door. Our brain has just learned these fast fill in the blank kind of processes. But slow thinking will be assessing to see if that's actually true or not. It's on the next page. So, what if we have fed too much time and proximity to the wrong wolf? So that's a question I want everybody to think about. Think about, like, is there something that you can remember or think of recently that you found that your brain was making a mistake, and it might have been because you were getting too much information that said something was true, but you came to find that it's actually a false truth. So I'll give everybody a moment to think about something there. Does anyone want to tell us they're either the story or something that they know that they might have got too much information and made them believe something was true, but then they came to find, no, that wasn't true. Fed the wrong wolf.
I'm not sure if this applies, but with the recent increase in the price of gasoline, I was thinking I should search for the least expensive gasoline. And I went to a place that often near me has less expensive gasoline than surrounding areas, and saw that the gasoline listed at the top, which is usually the kind I use, the unleaded, regular, or whatever you call it, 87, that was the lowest price. And so I went in and got that gas, and then subsequent to that I was driving other places after I already filled up with whatever that cheapest gas was, and noticed that other gas station signs had a different orientation than I was expecting to see on the sign. The cheaper gas was actually the 88, which was the higher ethanol. And I thought, which gas did I buy? Everybody else has this as a cheaper gas than the 87 unleaded. And I had not looked at the specifics. I had just immediately jumped to the conclusion, the one at the top is usually the one that is mine. So yeah, I think.
That's a great example, actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, you're going with the automatic
Right.
thought that you've had for
Right.
years, you've learned that way,
Right.
and the brain says, yes, go.
If I hadn't been sitting at that red light,
Yeah.
pondering, or actually integrating more information from this sign that was in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
instead of gazing at the red light, I examined the sign and thought, whoa, what did I just do?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's false advertisement too. I haven't checked it either. 88 is like a good 20 to 30 cents less, and it's like, what?
Well, it's higher ethanol than, I think it's 15%,
Okay.
as opposed to the normal 10% ethanol that you see.
But we should
Yeah.
all check to make sure our
Yeah,
engines can
check.
actually handle it. Anybody else with any a story or an example? I have an example. So this goes in a lot of different ways. It's, you know, those kind of processes where like you just go with what you've learned, but also very similar to the story of overfeeding the wolf. Right now, I sometimes will overfeed my mind with news, and that is very, very frustrating. It sometimes makes me very upset, makes me maybe angry sometimes. And because I watch a certain amount of time on the news and I spend a lot of proximity to that with my mind, my thoughts, it actually starts to wire my brain and make me feel very angry for multiple hours afterwards. And then it makes it very difficult for me to focus. Makes it difficult for me to focus on my work, say. And steadily over time also, I started to notice that my hypertension was increasing because I was doing more and more, too much news, anger all the time. I point at my watch because that's how I monitor my hypertension. My sitting heart rate's usually pretty high if I'm upset. So that's another example of overfeeding the wrong wolf. And literally I was wiring my brain to become more emotionally angry, frustrated, and upset, which was triggering and opening up certain ideas more on the frustrated side as opposed to thinking more clear-minded about ideas. I wasn't able to focus on work, not able to focus on people I care about. That might be I think that's a really good example as well of what you feed, then you start to turn into or become that wrong wolf, so to speak. So let's go to the next one. I wanted to connect this back to one of our previous ones, Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory, which connects very, very, very closely with what I'm presenting right now. Anybody remember Bronfenbrenner off the top of their head? So what is Bronfenbrenner? Your quick.
Well, the hierarchies of influence on your psyche.
Right.
So closer you, your mother, your brother, your friends, the state, the world. Yeah.
And connecting that to the neurobiology, that's a one-to-one. The more proximity and time to the center circle of your microsystem, people, places, and things in your immediate environment, your mind will get more and more wired to interact with, understand the world through, and think like that closest sphere of influence. This is basically connecting all of these together, and on the neurobiological level, all the way up to our big theories to try to explain how this all works. The basic going connection is the brain is always wiring towards the familiar. Everything that you do repeatedly, the brain is wiring towards that. Your neurons do not have a concept of truth or facts. It's only going with what you've done repeatedly. So sometimes we do learn bad ideas, bad habits, bad reactions, or quick impulses. So why that's just always happening with how we're trying to deal with life. The only way to counter that is to engage with your system 2 thinking. to slow down, to try to figure out, so is this really what I want to be or to do or to think? Can I actually rewire my brain? And the answer is yes, you can. But you have to try and be intentional about it. It has to be system 2 thinking to make it happen in the unconscious part of your brain. It will not change on its own. Like I said, the neurons have no concept of, I've got it right. It's just going with what it learned. So sometimes you have to be intentional in the conscious to make that change. Because sometimes we learn some really bad habits. For example, exosystem and macro system. We've got racism there, we've got sexism there, we have the influence of, say, news broadcasters or religious leaders that tell us up is down, and we might actually believe up is actually down until we start to think a little bit more about, what is real, what's not real. Because otherwise the unconscious mind will just go with what it learned. Some people say, for example, I do like to bring this up because it's so important. From 0 to 5 years old, where the neurogenesis is at its peak, any influence that a child has during that period of time can affect them for their entire lifetime. And a lot of people say that's why a lot of religious groups tend to target children at that age, because that will get wired at an early age, and that may be one of the last things that gets pruned out of the mind. It'll get really myelinated and hardened in there. And if it's a bad habit, it could be a bad tradition that they follow into adulthood. But that's just one example of 100 ways that somebody can learn something negative. Next one. So what can we do about this issue of potentially learning something, bad habits? Can we unlearn those types of things? How do we be present? How do we engage in slow thinking? Anybody have any ideas of ways that they might use to slow down and think more thoughtfully about, anything to try to rewire their mind? Yeah.
Question everything.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
Right. To slow yourself down.
Yeah.
I have a friend who is very particular about how much time he spends on his phone.
Yeah, that would be me. Yeah, being present. Yeah, that's the touch and grasp part right there. Any other examples anybody have?
Going outside for a walk.
Yeah. And why is that effective, I guess, is why I'm even bringing this up. How is this making it so that we might actually rewire our brain?
It takes you out of the automatic
Mm.
and reactive.
All right. I guess you're being present, and what is being present, I guess. Maybe we should explore that a bit more. What is being present?
I would say being outside exposes you to a greater variety of stimuli,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore almost necessitates more perception.
Mm.
Now, I think I've talked about this before, and I kind of think it relates to this. In another philosophical group that I attend, we have rules that the discussion, each person gets 3 minutes to make their case. And we go around the room once, you make your case in 3 minutes, and then after that you have to raise your hand and be recognized. So people are amazed and they say how civil that is. And I say, well, it's the rules that are civil. The people don't need to be civil, we just have to adhere to the rules, because if you say something that I disagree with, it could take 20 minutes to get back around to me to try to rebut what you said. And so consequently, that almost necessarily demands reflection.
Mm.
I have to hold those thoughts in my head
Mm-hmm.
for that time while other people are talking. I'm taking in other information,
Mhm.
but I have to be engaging with the things I want to rebut to you,
Mhm.
and that may take 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so consequently, that almost necessitates reflection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an exceptionally good example.
Yeah.
You're being forced to. Yeah.
It almost sounds like not being present, though.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I feel like a lot of what we're talking about, when we're saying present, people are thinking like, how do I do good thinking? But like, the way I interpret being present is not thinking about it afterwards or thinking about it
Mhm.
when I'm removed from it,
Yeah.
but actually using my system to in the moment instead of like later.
Mm-hmm.
And like going for a walk isn't, I mean, you're present in the moment of that walk, but it's not generally more present in life, I guess is the way I'm interpreting present.
I think you're bringing up like a really good clarification, because it can be both. Being present is also, so let's maybe make a comparison with being on your cell phone, for example. Being on your cell phone, you're being present with whatever's coming through
Right.
the screen. However, you're not present with what's going on around you.
It's narrow, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And what is the intent of being present? Sometimes it is, when you go out for a walk, you are actually trying to get your brain stimulated by all the incoming information.
I do some of my best thinking when I'm on a walk or on my bike or something like that, but I'm actually less present in the walk itself
Right.
when I'm doing that kind of thinking.
And if we think about the brain, like what you're trying to achieve, what are you trying to rewire? So if you're trying to rewire kind of your biological perceptions of the environment, you might not try to think during that time to be present with information. Say for example, you kind of have a weird walk where you want to change it up, like you have kind of like a limp and you want to work on it and concentrate on it. You'll actually be intentional as you're walking and try to feel your steps, feel the touch of the floor, feel the way your legs moving. That's being present for that specific goal at that time, to rewire how your brain has an automatic walk that's off. You want to kind of correct that. It's the same maybe also that maybe your mind's getting too digitally wired to like not be present for any information from the environment. So what you do then is just have more proximity and time to the environment to counteract the time that you're on the screen at that time. Just the same as like spending 20 minutes thinking about an idea, you're being present with that idea and how you process it, how you think about it. Do you have flawed thinking? Do they have flawed thinking? Let's look at this a little closer.
At the same time, you're being less present with the group or
Right.
everybody else's ideas.
But that's what I'm
It's
getting at,
always-
is the presence is a matter of what your intent for the presence. Yeah. So,
Because I'm a person that's always inside my own head sometimes,
Mm.
and I've been
Okay.
told in past, they're like, oh, well, you're not emotionally present.
mhm.
I said, well, because I'm trying to think instead of react.
Yeah. And that's part of it.
Yeah.
That's how you try to
It
counteract
really
that.
Depends on what we mean by presence. I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
The way I think of what you were describing a little bit is there are some people who meditate and the goal is to disconnect. But other people, for example, if they've experienced some trauma and they're having a flashback, their goal is the exact opposite. Their goal might be something called grounding. Just looking around the room, focusing on specific objects in the room,
Mhm.
reminding them that they are here
Mhm.
and not there.
Hmm.
kind of
Exactly. Yeah, the being present is what you make of it. Like, what is your goal? And I think that's another good example. Just you're focusing on your intent for that situation. The longer time and proximity you have with that, the more that will your brains and your neurons will. Yeah, sorry, not your brains. Your neurons will think, I need to actually record this. I need to myelinate this because this is something I'm doing right now. This appears to be important. It doesn't know if it is important. It's just perceiving it as I'm repeating it, so it must be myelinated. It must be wired. It must be let's find other connections. That's all the neurons know to do. And maybe I'm saying that wrong. It's just the neurons are trying to make connections and make everything faster and more efficient with your environment.
And if I remember myelin sheath from my, biology, are we talking the same, literally, structure of a nerve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying not to get all the, it's already very technical, it's the axon. It's not the actual main part of the cell, it's the part that connects to the other neurons so that it can send a quick signal to the other one. And the more myelinated it is, the quicker that signal gets sent. And it's almost like quite literally fast and slow thinking. Like that's kind of pretty much how that works. Myelination fast, gray matter slow.
So that happens physically in the brain.
So it's an electrical pulse, but at the ends of each neuron, there's actually a little itty bitty neurotransmitters that get sent across. It seems like that would be slow, but it's really, really
Well,
fast.
yeah, because what we call muscle memory is actually part of the brain and the central nervous system.
Oh, yeah, right.
That never occurred to me, or I've never heard that actually happens like in the pathways in the brain too, that you think a certain thing, it takes the same path and that path gets
Right.
stronger and faster.
Yep, yep. That's habit forming. That is quite literally how that happens. And to change that is to actually force the neurons to think a different path other than the one that you usually take. I mean, overall, most of our thinking is unconscious and fast thinking, but it's really helpful. Like I'm only able to stand right now because of my fast thinking. Like all my muscle memory is good to go right now. But this talking here, I need to think and process every bit of information coming in and kind of try to think of it and do it differently. On a side note, this is the difference between, as I usually describe it, where somebody might say we have free will versus no free will. Neurobiologically, yes, almost all this is non-free will stuff. It's the white matter, the hard wiring of the brain. But when we're intentional and holding an idea in our brain and actually trying to change the wiring of this, you can't get more free will than that. Like that's literally the whole process of acting on free will. Like what I'm doing here today, totally an act of free will. I would not do this in any automatic sense. In fact, this is a really good example. Me doing this repeatedly, I'm getting better and better at presentations. I still have some stuff to work out, but me 20 years ago, I wouldn't even be able to stand up here right now. So what I'm basically doing is processing this and working through it, holding it in my conscious, kind of having this construct. A lot of people will say, so this is an illusion here. Technically it is, but it's still going to be affecting how this is all wired back here. My biology is going to get affected. I'm going to have less emotional fear, social fear and anxiety for the environment. That's actually going to get rewired. My processing of information, how I interact with people, how I process in the moment. I'm getting a different way of perceiving my environment, trying to read it differently. So all of this is getting rewired right now while I'm engaging intentionally right now. So yeah, my free will is literally changing my non-free will processes in my unconscious right now. You guys sitting here and processing this stuff is actually affecting your unconscious awareness and information that you have. So yeah, kudos to everybody for that. So yeah, the original title, Proximity and Time, bringing it together, that's what this is all about. Whatever you spend the most proximity and time with, your neurons will wire itself for that, whatever it is. It has no concept of whether it's good for you or bad for you, and that's super important for you to recognize. You spend more time improving yourself or thinking more intelligently about something, questioning everything, that intentional spending time in proximity to that will wire your brain differently than just allowing whatever processes you had going on before. That is what being present is. That is proximity and time. tied all the way back to the neuron processes, the neurobiological processes. That's why we do this. Time for our questions and discussions. That's probably a lot of information to talk about for today. I chose some of my favorite books, some of my favorite authors right now, because I'm doing a lot of research on actually digital manipulation. Both Jonathan Haidt and Sander van der Linden, they're kind of on the forefront of doing research to figure out like how digital media has been affecting children especially, but also apparently us adults as well. Because a lot of these unconscious processes, repeated, are rewiring our brains so that we're not able to think as clearly. And that's what the data is starting to come in and find. And then John Pinnell is my biopsych book, one of my most formative, important books I ever read. It basically changed the way that I looked at the brain. Like, I take everything back to neurobiological processes. A lot of things make more sense to me. So next month is going to be on necessity and activities for neurogenesis. So this is going to be expansion on what we're covering right now, but more so getting into details of how to inspire your brain to like generate more neurons, make more connections. And it's going to be more about like improved self-improvement for next month. I also put the hyperlink this time on my presentation. I was told that might be a good idea. So that's it for today, and hope to see you next week.